Patriotism may indeed be, as Dr. Johnson said, the last refuge of a scoundrel, but it's also the tyrant's first resort. People afraid of outsiders are easily manipulated. The warrior caste, supposedly society's protectors, often become protection racketeers. In times of war or crisis, power is easily stolen from the many by the few on a promise of security. The more elusive or imaginary the foe, the better for manufacturing consent. The Inquisition did a roaring trade against the devil, and the 20th century's struggle between capitalism and communism had all the hallmarks of the old religious wars. Was defending either system really worth the risk of blowing up the world? Now we are losing hard-won freedoms on the pretext of a worldwide war on terror, as if terrorism were something new. Those who think it is should read The Secret Agent, a novel in which anarchist suicide bombers prowl London wearing explosives. It was written by Joseph Conrad 100 years ago. The Muslim fanatic is proving a worthy replacement for the heretic, the anarchist, and especially the Red Menace so helpful to military budgets throughout the Cold War. The Neolithic Revolution seems to have been inevitable, or nearly so, wherever the makings for it were found. If the discovery of farming had been sparked by a freak combination of circumstances, we would expect to see it happen only in one particular place and spread outward from there, or to see it happen very rarely and at widely differing times. Until the Upper Paleolithic, or shortly before, nature had kept all the meddlesome apes in one big laboratory, the Old World. But once the apes got out and made their way to the New World, there were two laboratories, each stocked with different raw materials and largely cut off from the other when sea levels rose with the melting of the ice. Given that the plants, animals, environments, and technologies in each lab were so different, the astonishing thing is what similar paths were taken on each side of the Earth, and how alike the results turned out to be. When the Spaniards reached the American mainland in the early 16th century, the peoples of the Western and Eastern hemispheres had not met since their ancestors parted as Ice Age hunters running out of game. It is true that there had been a few pre-Columbian contacts with Polynesians, Vikings, and possibly Asians, but these were too fleeting and too late to affect native flora and fauna or the rise of civilization. Not even such able seamen as the Norway rat and the cockroach had reached America before Columbus. Neither had the Old World's terrible plagues, such as smallpox. So what took place in the early 1500s was truly exceptional, something that had never happened before and never will again. Two cultural experiments, running in isolation for 15,000 years or more, at last came face to face. Amazingly, after all that time, each could recognize the other's institutions. When Cortés landed in Mexico, he found roads, canals, cities, palaces, schools, law courts, markets, irrigation works, kings, priests, temples, peasants, artisans, armies, astronomers, merchants, sports, theater, art, music, and books. High civilization, differing in detail but alike in essentials, had evolved independently on both sides of the earth. The test case of America suggests that we are predictable creatures, driven everywhere by similar needs, lusts, hopes, and follies. Smaller experiments running independently elsewhere had not reached the same level of complexity, but many showed the same trends. Even on remote Polynesian islands, settled by people descended from a boatload or two of intrepid seafarers, many civilizations sprang up, complete with social rank, intensive farming, and stone monuments. Faced not only with the similarity, but also the synchronicity of these discrete developments, we have to ask, Why were no crops domesticated anywhere before the end of the last ice age? The people of 20,000 years ago were just as smart as those of 10,000 years ago. Not all of them were glutted with game, and the ice did not hold sway in lower latitudes. One possible answer to this question is a worry to us now. By studying ancient ice cores, which like tree rings leave a yearly record, climatologists have been able to track the average global temperature back over 250,000 years or more. These studies show that the world's climate has been unusually stable for the past 10,000 years, exactly the lifetime of agriculture and civilization. It seems we couldn't have invented farming earlier, even if we tried. The studies also show that the Earth's climate has sometimes fluctuated wildly, breaking from an ice age or plunging into one, not over centuries, but in decades. The natural triggers of such events are not well understood. Some sort of chain reaction may provoke the rapid upsets, perhaps a sudden reversal of ocean currents, or a release of methane from thawing permafrost. In his book on the glacial core studies, Richard Alley points out what should be obvious. Humans have built a civilization adapted to the climate we have. Increasingly, humanity is using everything this climate provides, and the climate of the last few thousand years is about as good as it gets. Change is not in our interest. Our only rational policy is not to risk provoking it. Yet, that civilization itself, through fossil fuel emissions and other disturbances, is upsetting the long calm in which it grew. Ice sheets at both poles are breaking up. Glaciers in the Andes and Himalayas are thawing. Some have disappeared in only 25 years. Droughts and unusually hot weather have already caused world grain output to fall or stagnate for 8 years in a row. During the same 8 years, the number of mouths to feed went up by 600 million. Steady warming will be bad enough, but the worst outcome would be a sudden overturning of Earth's climatic balance, back to its old regime of sweats and chills. If that happens, crops will fail everywhere, and the great experiment of civilization will come to a catastrophic end. In the matter of food, we have grown as specialized and therefore as vulnerable as a saber-toothed cat. Thank you very much.